Lovers of Christ, prepare for battle. Satan's on the move. Keep your weapon at your side.
I have with me today Roger Deemer.
Stand up for truth when wrong seems right.
I was fascinated with how it helped people individually to succeed in living a spiritual life. Each personality type has strengths.
Breaking the enemy's power. In the strength of Jesus, we can stand in the darkest hour. Living with one foot in heaven, ready when he calls our name. For believers to live is Christ, to die is only gain.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. I'm Patty. I have with me today Roger Deemer, who has written a book, Godly Personalities. Show them the book and read the subtitle.
It's Godly Personalities, Growing Spiritually in Your Created Personality Type.
This is a fascinating topic. I know I have been studying personalities for probably about 25 or 30 years. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to write the book.
Well, I'm a retired Air Force officer, and I was actually interested in Myers-Briggs personality types. During my time in the Air Force, I received some training, and I got feedback on my own personality type, and I just found it interesting. But then my last assignment in the Air Force, I was a professor of leadership at Defense Acquisition University in Virginia. And Myers-Briggs personality type was part of our curriculum. We used it to teach leaders how to be better leaders. Well, at the same time, I was teaching a Sunday school class in my church, and I noticed the same personality types in the members of my adult Sunday school class and how it influenced their spiritual lives and their interactions in our class too. And I just started taking notes. And over time, my notes grew, and people started telling me I should publish that. I had some really good ideas in there.
That's interesting. That is, so you see this in a person's personality affects their spiritual understanding or their spiritual life?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I was a physicist in the Air Force. I had no training in psychology. So as I got into this, it was an interesting field for me. But I would never call myself an expert, but other people started to call me an expert because I trained people, and I actually went out as a consultant. I was still active duty. I wore the Air Force uniform, but I was a consultant to train military organizations in human interaction, team building, and leadership. So over time, I developed some expertise without being a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So even though I didn't see myself as an expert, other people did and encouraged me to write the book. And I found that it was really useful in a lot of different ways. I was fascinated with how it helped people individually to succeed in living a spiritual life. Each personality type has strengths. I consider the personality created by God. The subtitle here, created personality type, is deliberate because I think our Creator gave us our personalities, they're gifts, and each gift has its own strengths, areas that come naturally to us that we do well at. But we also have vulnerabilities, areas that we tend to stumble in. And it's real helpful just to be aware of those strengths and vulnerabilities to succeed as a Christian. I also noticed how interaction in the church revolved around personality areas. People would get along well based on personality commonalities, but I noticed conflict, and that was an issue that's been a concern of mine since I was an idealistic youth, as a teenage Christian first committing my life to God. Why is there conflict in the church? That shouldn't be. We should be united in Christ. Well, as I grew older, I realized we're human beings. We have ways that we don't get along just like anybody else. And as I was working on this book, I noticed the personality type issues, areas where personality types were different, result in conflict, influencing church conflict. So one of my hopes in the book is that the church can find ways to reduce conflict and find greater unity through understanding those personality differences.
When you're talking about the personalities, I understand there's like 4 different basic personality types. Could you tell us a little bit about those? Some of our listeners may have never had any training or been aware of that, but I know there's several different personality analyses out there, and they call them different. They call the personalities different names.
Yes.
But can you kind of review them so I'll know?
Okay. There are a lot of personality assessments. Myers-Briggs is probably one of the most powerful and the most popular in the secular world. It hasn't caught on in the Christian world much yet, and I hope to change that. But and a little bit of history behind it. It started with a psychiatrist, Carl Jung. He brought up or discovered the idea of what they call dichotomous choices. And it's kind of like being right and left-handed. In our mind, the way our mind works, we have ways that we habitually choose to use our minds based on dichotomous scales. The most common one is introvert-extrovert.
Yes, I've heard
And
that.
a lot of people are familiar with that. Introverts are energizing the inner world of reflection and ideas. They spend a lot of time thinking privately in the inner world. Extroverts get their energy from interacting in the outer world. They tend to be more talkative and more social, but not always. The other scales, there's a judging and perceiving, which is related to your orientation to the outer world. When you're interacting with the outer world, do you like to be judging, making decisions? Or do you like to be more open-ended, taking in data? Those are perceivers. There's a sensing perceiving scale that talks about how you perceive the world. Are you reliant on just the simple facts of which your senses take in? Or do you intuit more? Intuitors take data that they collect through their senses and they see connections and patterns. And so if you habitually do that, you're more of an intuitor. And the fourth scale is thinking perceiving. That's actually the third scale, the way they're usually listed with the fourth that I'm mentioning now. Thinking and perceiving is how we make our decisions. Thinkers tend to be more objective and feelers are focused more on harmony in human relationships as they make decisions, so that influences the way we judge the world and think about it.
I know there's some books out on the market, even for young children to read, where they pair the personalities with an animal, whether they're kind of like an otter or a golden retriever. There are some others that are a little bit more advanced in things. Your book is very technical.
Yes. A lot of the reader feedback I've gotten, they say it's not a quick read. It goes into the depth of all 16 personality types. Most of the assessments try to simplify it. They narrow it down to 4 personality types, and they associate it with animals or things to try and make it a little easier and quick. This one goes into a lot more depth than that.
So this book would maybe suit the needs of a person who is maybe a deeper thinker. But I found this one very fascinating, and I was very interested in reading the depth of it.
and I hope that doesn't intimidate people. The authors of Myers-Briggs theory, Isabel Myers and her mother, Catherine Briggs, were Christians. And in Isabel's book, at the front, she quotes Romans that talks about the body being different parts and the different gifts that were given. And her book is titled Gifts Differing, and it's based on that concept in Romans. She recognized that the personality types we have are a gift from God. And it was part of their vision initially that Myers-Briggs theory would help people in their spiritual lives. But over time, it's been secularized, and it's kind of gone away from the Christian. Well, it never really was embraced by Christianity. And even as I researched my book, I found some books on spirituality related to Myers-Briggs theory, but they were very vague and general, and there wasn't much biblically based. And in my book, I tried to base every section of the book on the Bible. There's Bible passages, references throughout it that don't necessarily prove my points, but at least show the biblical background of where I got my ideas from. So they're not just ideas that are coming off the top of my head or that I'm pulling out of Neverland. It's very biblically based.
Yes, it sounds like you have done a lot of research into this. You mentioned conflict in the church and the personality types possibly that would be behind that. Can you explain that a little bit, or how can we use that, not just to recognize, but how can we use that to help us get along with people better, to improve our interactions with others?
On all 4 scales, there are conflicts that arise if people are strong on either end. I shouldn't use the term strong, it's clear. If you exhibit your preference for thinking versus feeling clearly, and you get two people that have clear preferences on either side, they tend to have conflicts come up. And I'll use the thinking feeling as an example. Thinkers like to be real objective, and in the church, if they're making a decision on whether to enter a new building program or something,
Yes.
that tends to be an area where you're committing lots of money, people have really strong feelings, and it tends to bring up conflict. If you have two people on a committee that are trying to make decisions, one's a thinker, they tend to be very objective and analytical. The feeler will be more human-based. They might talk about feelings associated with what will happen, and they'll look at the human element. And they'll end up going down two paths that don't need to be in conflict, but they'll perceive conflict just because they see the differences. And in God, I believe we find both the thinking and the feeling preference in perfect harmony. And that's what he desires for the church. If in the Bible I found numerous references to heart and mind that I think connect directly to the thinking, feeling preferences. The mind tends to be more analytical and objective thinking. The heart is more the harmonious feeler preference, but they're both related to deciding. And when you can get them to agree in unity, that's when we find the Holy Spirit there with us. When we march off on our individual preferences separately in conflict, we leave the Holy Spirit behind.
So that would be like presenting a logical argument to one person while you would want to present maybe more of an emotional or maybe not emotional, but a values-based argument to someone else in order for them to accept your...
Politicians actually
yes.
use that to win the hearts of voters. They present an objective argument to win the thinkers and a more value-based argument to win the feelers, and as long as they can keep them consistent, it makes sense.
Well, I know studying the personality types on the limited basis that I have has helped me with my children, with relationships, recognizing even where conflict is going to come up, or how to talk to a person so that they can accept what I have to say or whatever. So I think, especially this in-depth one, I was ready for something a little bit more in-depth. So I really appreciate the book, and I think there's many others in our audience out there that would really gain a lot of insight and would help them with their leadership skills, or just even in understanding the people around them. So
it's helped me in my marriage, and
yes.
being a father to our three children has been tremendous to understand my children and how they're different from me and my wife too.
Roger, I know people are going to be interested in your book and want to know a little bit more, so do you have a website, or how would people be able to get in touch with you or find out more?
I do have a website with reader testimonials and more information about the book. I have an email address where people can order the book, godlypersonalities@gmail.com. I have a Facebook page also. They can look up Godly Personalities on Facebook and learn about it there.
People will love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being with us today, and I look forward to just continuing to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you.
For